Hey guys, can you believe it? It is now officially October, another month down, and we are officially in spooky season. Are you excited? I know I am.
Are you ready to go crazy?
But we can't dig into October until we get into September. So, you know what time it is. It's time for the monthly wrap up. So, let's get into it. Now, the first book I'm going to get into is kind of just a continuation of what I was doing in August. So I had started the series at the end of August and I just continued on in September. And that series is the Cherry Tree Harbor series by Melanie Harlow. And this would be the second book I got into, well, the first book I got into in September, which was Hideaway Heart. And yeah, let's talk about it. So the plot of this book is we're following one of the brothers in the family because this whole series is covering just one family. So one of the brothers, he is trying to open up his bar, but he gets a call from one of his ex Navy SEAL buddies because he used to be a Navy SEAL. And this buddy of his is like, hey, could you please watch my sister and be like her bodyguard because his sister is like a famous singer. And Mans is on the fence because he's like, I hate being a bodyguard for celebrities. They are the worst, but I will do you a solid, sir, because you saved my life once. So, um, this sister, however, does not want to be watched. She wants to be alone. But as a celebrity, you're kind of never alone. So she was naive on that end. But he is her bodyguard, and that basically is the plot of the book. He just is her bodyguard while she's kind of in town, like close to him. So let's get into the pros. Now, I didn't have a lot of pros about this book. I wanted to like it. I love a good bodyguard romance, but I really disliked most of this book. The only pro I really liked was seeing the characters from the first book and seeing them interact with these characters because I liked that book. This one, no. So let's talk about the cons. Now, I have many a cons. First off, it was more insta lusty than falling in love. From moment one, they both are like, "Ooh, you're hot." And it wasn't really like any yearning or building of tension. It was just spice, honestly. Most of it was spice. I didn't feel a real connection between the characters. There was relatively no chemistry because, like I said, insta lust. And I don't know how we got from meeting to falling in love, but it happens, unfortunately. It was just too much spice for my liking. And I like spice in a book, but there has to be balance. Another thing I didn't like about this book was the similarities between this book and the previous book in the series. This one had the same circumstances where she's only going to be there for a certain amount of time, as was the case for the FMC in the previous book. There was even a shower scene that was nearly identical to the first book. So I didn't love that. And also, we were building a lot of, tension in a way for the ending. And I just felt it was a bit words. It was a bit anticlimactic for me. So for all of these reasons, I rated this book 3.25 stars, but there was still hope for the next book. So the next book in this series is called Make Believe Match, and I really loved this one. So let's talk about the plot. So the plot of the book, of course, we're following another one of the brothers in the family. He works for a firm that buys real estate, and he is supposed to make a deal to buy this ski resort that's kind of shabby and has seen better days. But while he's trying to do this, he's hanging out with his family and he meets this girl at the bar. This girl, he has like a little fun one night stand with, and lo and behold, it is the daughter of the grandmother who is in charge of selling this ski resort. So because of this, he doesn't really have a good chance to sell it, and his company's kind of at their wits' end with how slow things are going. So they give it off to one of his like enemies. He hates this man. So he's like, you know what? Fine. I'm going to quit. I quit. And then his whole thing is I'm going to make sure that this company does not get the sale in the ski resort. So what does he do? He calls up the the grandchild of the grandma who owns the ski resort, and is like, I'm gonna make sure you keep this place. And the grandma wants to give it to the grandchild to inherit, but in like the will, um of this like ski resort, because I guess it was owned by the grandfather, but you have to be married in order to inherit it. And so the whole thing is that they're going to get married so she can inherit the ski lodge, and they can kind of update it together, get some investors, get it updated so that they don't have to sell to his company that he quit from. So that is the plot. And I ate it up. Let's get into the pros. Now, I loved these characters. Their chemistry just flew off the page. And like I said, I don't really love Instalust, and how they met was kind of Instalusty because they have a one night stand. But after that one night stand, the chemistry, it really it cooks. It's so good. I loved seeing their, kind of relationship bloom and blossom, among them trying to get investors and everything like that. There's not a lot of, well, there is some yearning, but their sexual relationship kind of happens relatively quickly, which I don't necessarily love, but the banter and everything else kind of made up for it. The pacing is great. I was never really bored. And yeah, I just love the way everything unfolded. It was done so beautifully. So let's get into a con. Now, like I said, a con because I only had one con, and it was really just the spicy scenes were a little bit repetitive for my liking, just the same thing. And I was like, okay, could do without this scene if it's going to be the same as the last one.
Variety is the spice of life.
But I digress. I gave this book 4.75 stars. I really enjoyed it. All right, next up, the fourth book in this series is called Small Town Swoon. Let's get into the plot. Now, of course, we're following another brother in this family. There's a lot of brothers, okay? And he just happens to be big shot celebrity. He is well known for his roles in this like TV show where he plays kind of like your meathead, I believe, lifeguard. And because of this, he doesn't really get any dramatic roles, which is what he's yearning for. He's kind of been shelved into this kind of role, which he wants to branch out. So his publicist, his agent, basically is like, go home for a little bit, refresh, maybe get in touch with your feelings, because man's refuses. And so he does. He goes home and he reconnects with his sister's best friend, who kind of slightly hates him because when she was like 16, she offered him her V card and he said nah. He was 19 at the time. He was trying to be a good guy. But because of that, she was kind of upset with him. But he tries to reconnect with her, and that's kind of the plot of the book. And yeah, let's talk about the pros. Now, I love seeing all of the character cameos from the previous books in this book. It was like my bread and butter. I loved it. But I really loved the characters themselves, the FMC and the MMC in here, just kind of seeing their feelings become known to themselves, because they're very much like, nah, that's not what this is, love. But seeing their kind of recognition on their own feelings and their relationship growing into what it becomes is really nice to see. And I enjoyed that aspect of it. And plus, this MMC, so thoughtful. I loved seeing this man do all of the things because the book is called what is Small Town Swoon, and I was swooning over this MMC. I was like, he's so thoughtful. Love it. But let's get into the cons. Now, again, I had noticed with Melanie Harlow's books, the spicy scenes tend to be a little bit more on the repetitive side, which it's kind of irritating. But at least in this book, the spicy scenes were also balanced with the plot. So I didn't have too much negativity about it. Just, I was like, okay, this is what it is. This seems to be all that Melanie Harlow can do. But that's fine. The next thing I didn't necessarily love was the plot of the book was good, but I wished for more. I needed more obstacles or something. It was just everything happened so smoothly, and maybe this is a toxic trait of mine, but I yearn for some type of discourse in my books. I need something negative to happen that we can work through. I can't not have anything. I don't need like happily ever afters are nice, but I need there to be some type of harrowing journey to get there to enjoy myself. To really feel like the ending was worth it. And for this book, I mean I got the happily ever after, but I just didn't feel satisfied. So for those reasons, I gave this book 4.5 stars because I did love the couple and I did love the story. Yeah, I just needed a little more. Now, last but certainly not least in this series, I read Slapshot Surprise. And this one, it happened to be my favorite one, even though it covers a trope that some people absolutely despise, but I actually really enjoy. So let's get into the plot. Okay, so the plot of this book is the only sister in this family. She's on a plane with like this famous hockey player, and they're sitting next to each other, and she's like having a panic attack, and he soothes her. They leave the plane, she's embarrassed, whatever, but she ends up meeting him again at a wedding. He's just one of the groomsmen and he recognizes her and they again hit it off. They have like this chemistry between them. And so they end up having a one night stand and they go their separate ways. She goes on living her life. He's at the top of his game, living his life. And she learns that she is pregnant. And yeah, so it's just like the fallout of that, and that's the plot. And yes, it's an accidental pregnancy trope, which everyone and their mom seems to dislike. I mean, there are some people that like it, me included, but I don't know why people hate this trope so much. But I really enjoyed it, so let's get into the pros. Now, this book had the yearning I had been yearning for the previous four books because the previous four books are kind of like they like each other or they're instantly like lusty for each other. There's not really like any in between, not a lot of yearning. The first book had some yearning, but the rest of them not so much. But this one, the yearning, I loved it. Plus the MMC, he changes the way you see him change his character because at the beginning he's very much like a I don't want to have a family. I'm focused on my career. I don't even know if I want to get married one day. Definitely don't want to have kids. But seeing him go from that to like him being very much like a family man, I ate that up. Ate it up. It was so good.
Delicious.
I loved how he became softer for the FMC. Just that slow progression was chef's kiss. Loved it. And the chemistry, like I said, their chemistry kind of just, oh, it just zings off the page. The pacing was fantastic. I really was never bored. Was never bored reading this. I was so invested in the relationship that I just had to keep reading. There was nothing yeah, I had no issues with this book. This was a 5-star read for me. I I had no cons. I enjoyed every minute of it, and I think this one was the best out of the series. Even though it's an accidental pregnancy trope, I loved it. So do with that what you will. Next up, we've moved on from the Cherry Tree Harbor series and we went into Helena Hunting's Meet Cute. And it was such a cute book. Let's get into it. So, the plot of this book is this girl and guy, they're both lawyers. They went to law school together and they were kind of friends. They had like this rapport. She was like his biggest like fan because he did acting in his childhood career and she loved his show that he was in. So they had like this rapport going on, and then something happens and she ends up hating him. Um, but years go by. She's at her own firm. He comes back into her life because trust needs to be made for his younger sister, and he's just coming with his parents. And she still hates him, but something happens and he takes guardianship of his younger sister. And he kind of ends up having to take into account his college friend, who still hates him, because she ends up being like kind of like a guardian. I don't remember exactly the term, but all big events or any big decisions have to be going through her in order to decide the just where the younger sister's going to end up, either with the older brother or their aunt. And that's kind of where the story goes. And I ate it up. I loved this book. Let's get into the pros. I really loved that the storyline of it all was very interesting, unique, and things kind of unfolded how I thought things might unfold. Like naturally, nothing felt a little like I didn't have to suspend disbelief. Like things happened how the world would happen. And I think that was the most interesting thing. But I also love the internal struggle of the characters. They, especially the MMC, goes through a lot and he has a lot of internal baggage and having to go through, you know, his own things with the tragedy that happens in the book. So just seeing that, and then the FMC going through her own internal struggles, battling her thoughts on this MMC because of, you know, how he did her wrong previously, and just the situation and not trying to take advantage of the young girl, i.e. his sister, through, you know, whatever means, because the young girl does have a very large trust, so there's a lot of things that go into that. And just seeing that all happen hit me right here in my heart. I enjoyed every minute of it. These characters were so good and I felt so connected to them. But let's get into some cons. Now, the villain in the story, because there is a villain, their actions and the way things kind of pan out was a tad bit predictable, which I didn't love. But overall, I enjoyed the story and the characters, so I gave this book 4.5 stars. It was really good. So, still pick it up. Next up, as I have said in previous videos, maybe on my TikTok, not so much on here. I have been trying to get through my physical TBR, and so I ended up picking up So This Is Love by Elizabeth Lim, and it's just one of those twisted tales. So the plot of this book is basically, um, what if Cinderella never tried on the glass slipper? That is the plot of this book, and see how everything kind of pans out from there. Let's get into the pros. Now, I really loved that we have like a what if story. So the what if of it all I found very interesting. I liked that we introduced some new characters. There was a new villain, but we also emphasized the current villains, you know, i.e., the stepmother. So I got all of that I got in the original, but I thought this was a very creative take on this story and how everything kind of pans out. I loved I just loved where they went with this story. But let's get into the cons. So, some things I didn't really love about this book were the misconnections and the constant miscommunication. I hate it. I hate miscommunication being used in any book, but this one specifically felt more intense because there were so many misconnections. And it didn't help that Cinderella herself, her character, is a bit of a negative Nancy. She's very much like, oh, these are the cards I've been handed. I'm just gonna go along with this. Like nothing good can really happen, you know. Like this is what it is. This is the life I'm living. And I'm like, ma'am, what? What?
Something's not adding up here.
I was like, "Can you get like some positive attitude here? I'm getting tired of this. This little pessimistic attitude. I'm not here for it." So yeah, I didn't really enjoy that aspect of it all. Um, so yeah, it there was too much of that going on. So yeah, I gave this book 4 stars. Still good, but yeah, Cinderella was kind of getting on my last nerve. Now, the next book I read was Part of Your World by Liz Braswell, and this is another twisted Disney tale. And this one, the plot of this one is The Little Mermaid, but what if Ariel had never defeated Ursula? Now, let's get into some pros. Now, again, I like how creative they can get with these books, and I did enjoy that aspect. What I really loved is Ariel as a character because in the original, she's kind of like naive and just like all over the place, scatterbrained. Only really has her wants and needs on her mind. But in this book, she has a more mature point of view, or yeah, she's got a very mature perspective now, and she has to really look at the bigger picture of things. So it's not really what she wants; it's kind of what is best for her people and even Eric's people. So she has a lot on her shoulders, but I think that I really love this mature Ariel. But let's get into the cons. Now, this book was very slow paced. I had a hard time listening to it because I listened to this book, funnily enough, since I own it, but I listened to the audiobook. And I don't think I would have gotten through it as quickly as I did if I did not listen to this book because it was very slow. The kind of ups and downs of Ursula's or Eric and Ariel's plots fell stagnant most of the time if they went anywhere. So there was like a plot. We're following that plot. Nothing goes on with that plot. We somehow lose that plot. Okay. So a lot of things kind of just fell through. And then Eric and Ariel, though I did say Ariel was more mature in this book, her and Eric's plans to kind of like defeat Ursula are very juvenile. I was like, that's all you got? That's it. Okay. Not a lot of thought went into those plans. So I was like, all right, I thought we grew up a little bit, but okay. And then Ursula's kind of her downfall was a little anticlimactic for me. And the ending itself made me feel very unsatisfied. So for all those reasons, I gave this book 3.5 stars. I don't know if I would recommend it necessarily because yeah, I don't think it was really worth the the length of this book. She's a little thick. So, yeah. All right. So, the next book that I read was For She Is Wrath by Emily Varga, and there's some mixed reviews on this one, but I really enjoyed it. So, let's get into the plot. Now, the plot of this book is basically this woman. She has been framed for murdering this one very influential figure in this world. And she was sent to this prison. She's getting tortured every day. She's still trying to escape this place because she does not belong. She's trying to get back to her dad. And the reason she's in this place is because her best friend slash lover, love of her life, betrayed her. So she is full of feminine rage. But she ends up getting out of this prison with the help of another prisoner. And they kind of go on this journey of revenge. And that's the plot of this book. Let's get into the prose. Okay, first off, the feminine rage in here, I don't see it enough in my books, okay? But I loved it. I was fully connected to the FMC from like moment one she was introduced. Like her anger, rightfully so. It just felt so like, oh yeah, I felt so angry for her and I was rooting for her from moment one. And then her character development is done beautifully. Her kind of journey of revenge and then ultimately forgiveness later on. It is done. I'm literally speechless with how well it was done. It was amazing. I really loved this story and all that it came with it. So yeah, let's just dive into the cons. Now, like I said, the plot is, the she's kind of like in this prison because for the most part, well, she was framed, but another reason is because her man's and best friend betrayed her. Now, this MMC, he does get forgiveness from her eventually, but I don't think that there was enough like groveling on his part. Like he needed to do so much more to be in her good graces, in my opinion, and that just didn't happen. So, yeah, there's that. And then her inner monologue, the FMC's inner monologue, felt a bit repetitive at times. I didn't need to hear the same thing over and over again. Like I got the point. So that was kind of frustrating. But I gave For She's Wrath 4.5 stars because it was still an amazing read. I very much recommend this. All right, so this next book that I read, I was really feeling the fall vibes. I wanted to be in fall. So, everyone and their mom recommended this book to me. So, the book that I read was The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Lori Gilmore. Let's get into the plot. Now, the plot of this book is this girl who is kind of in the corporate world, and she witnesses something that really changes her perspective on the corporate world. So she doesn't want to be in it anymore. And her aunt wants her to take over this pumpkin spice cafe in this small town. So she takes that opportunity and she becomes the owner of this cafe. And along the way, she meets like the people in this town, which happens to be like this grumpy man who like runs the farm that's there. And yeah, that's kind of like the plot. It's just her taking over the cafe and her interactions with the townsfolk. Let's get into the prose. Now, I really loved the setting of this book. It was in your face fall vibes. Everything about this book, very fall. So, if you want to get into the fall spirit, this definitely sets you up for that. And I really love the quirky characters. The townsfolk are really fun and imaginative. And there are other books in this series. So the author does a really good job of kind of setting up those characters like their couples books, which some authors have trouble doing, but Laurie Gilmore did a fantastic job with it. Which Gilmore, the author's last name is Gilmore, and this town felt very Stars Hollow, like Gilmore Girls esque. So, coincidence? You decide. The last thing I really loved is like the little mystery subplots of this book, the things that kind of happened. I really enjoyed. I thought those were really cute. But let's get into the cons. Now, this book is supposed to be a romance book, but I didn't understand it. I didn't understand the romance. First off, there's so much words. There's so much miscommunication in this freaking book that it literally pushes the plot from point A to point B, like till the very end. And I hate miscommunication trope being used in books, but I can understand it in some places. But if it's the sole reason you're getting from the beginning to the end of your book, no, hate it. But other than that, I didn't understand the chemistry between there was no chemistry between the characters. I didn't understand the love that was happening between the characters. They saw each other once every couple of weeks, they had some type of interaction, and somehow that transformed into love. I didn't They spent barely any time together over however much time, because the timeline is crazy. I don't really understand when we were, because every time they hung out, I was like, oh, I haven't seen them in like a couple of weeks. And I was like, are we still even in October? Like, I don't understand what's happening. Timeline all over the place. But they spent barely any time together among whoever knows how long, and had almost like not even no meaningful conversation. Maybe one meaningful conversation on her end. Nothing from him though. So I'm like, how we get from love, how do we get to love? How do we get to the math ain't math in here. And then the way things ended was very frustrating, because, there's a third act breakup in this, and then she obviously takes him back after this whole thing goes on, and I think there need to be some more groveling happening. And then I just felt so unsatisfied with the end in reference to their story. So, yeah. Um I didn't really enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it, but I gave this book 3.5 stars, and that's mainly just because of the other elements. The fall vibes, the other quirky characters, like everything to do with not the romance, I loved, which is crazy since it's a romance book. Anyways, on to the next book. Okay, so following along with fall vibes, I got into the book September House by Carissa Orlando. Let's get into the plot. Now, the plot of this book is basically there's this house that this married couple moves into, and every September some spooky stuff happens. So much so that the husband ends up leaving. And the wife, she stays because she's like, this is my house. No thing is going to drive me out. But she doesn't know where her husband goes. And her daughter hasn't heard from her dad in a while. So she's like, where's dad? Mom's like, I have no idea. And she's like, well, find him. So daughter comes in to this town in September, and the wife is freaking out because she knows that if the daughter comes down, sees all this stuff, she's going to freak out and demand that this woman leaves her house. So basically it's just her trying to keep the house's shenanigans under wraps from her daughter, and the daughter is just trying to find her dad. So that's basically the plot of this book, and it unfolds very interestingly. Now, the pros of this book, I really enjoyed the spookiness. It was very fall vibe, so definitely something to add on to your fall TBR. Um, Very spooky. If you're a fan of like Monster House, like the movie, this kind of gives that. And I really love the layout of this kind of the story. Though it does lull in some places, I think the story, how it's set up and how everything comes together is is done quite well. But let's get into the con. Now, like I said, it does lull in some places. So I don't think I would have finished it as quickly as I did had I not been listening to it, because I listened to this book and there were some points where I was like, we're still on about this. Like, I don't care. Um, but that didn't happen very often. So I still enjoyed the book. But another big con for me was the daughter. From moment one, I disliked her. And she didn't get any better throughout the entirety of the book. And in fact, she got worse. Every scene that she was in made me want to pull my hair out. And towards the end, when she started gaslighting everyone, well, mostly her mom, she started gaslighting her mom. I was like, yo, I absolutely hate this character. And so when, like, I could dislike a character, but when I hate a character to my very bones and they're very much a main character in a book, it can really hurt um my reading of the book. Like, I could really dislike a book because of a bad character. And unfortunately, this character did impact how much I liked this book. But I still enjoyed the book in its entirety and I thought it was very much fall vibes. So I gave this book 4 stars. Now, this next set of books, I want to talk about them as a whole because each book kind of just carries on the same story. So I just want to talk about them as a whole, and that would be the Thorn Chapel series by Sierra Simone. So we have Lessons in Thorns, Feast of Sparks, Harvest of Sighs, and Door of Bruises. Let's get into the plot. Now, we start off with a girl who is coming back to this town that she hasn't really been back to since she was a kid. And she is only coming back because she received a note in her mother's handwriting, and her mother has been gone, disappeared for like a solid decade or so. So she's been missing. So she's like, okay, I have to come back because I need to know where my mom is. And then there's other characters. There's 6 main characters total. And they're all kind of in this place called Thorn Chapel. And they all have their own roles and they all have their own kind of dynamics. Essentially, this book is very much talking about like these rituals that happen that their parents used to do. And they're all kind of drawn to this thorn chapel, like an actual chapel covered in thorns. I know, creative. And um and these rituals that their parents had done in the past. And that's kind of the plot of the book. We're really just following this one character in the beginning, at least in the first book. In Lessons in Thorns, this is kind of like her book, not like any other perspectives are happening in this one. As we go through the series, though, you do get the other 5 characters' perspectives because they're very much main characters in this series. I really can't go into it further because that's the general plot of the whole thing, and not really much happens. But let's get into some pros. So for Lessons in Thorns, I loved the unique storyline. I liked the unique dynamic between the characters. I haven't read a book with this kind of dynamic between characters ever. It was kind of giving polyamorous. And I loved the mystery behind the rituals. For Feast of Sparks, I really enjoyed um, the relationship between the 2 male characters. I thought it was interesting in how things progressed with that relationship specifically. In Harvest of Sighs, I enjoyed the kind of destruction of it all. There's things that happen, and doesn't really end in a happy ending, to say the least. Last but certainly not least, Door of Bruises. I enjoyed the wrap of it all. I liked the lore that I got, and I loved the kind of the background of the rituals and how things kind of came together in this one. Let's get into cons. Now, I really disliked in A Lesson of Thorns some of the language and the events that took place in this book. Um, Specifically, words like sex monster or the use of stupider took me out of the story for sure. In Feast of Sparks, I thought there was so much spice in this book unnecessarily. So much. We didn't really progress in anything. It was just a lot of spice. A lot of spice. And there is a cliffhanger of sorts that didn't sit well with me. For Harvest of Sighs, I hated 75% of this book, to be honest, because there's quite literally no substance for the first 75% of this book. And then most stuff happens at the end. Pacing is terrible. I didn't love it. Um, yeah, lots and lots of spice in this one. Finally, Door of Bruises. I hated that I wanted more because the way things end is very interesting. But I wish we would have expanded on how things ended than a majority of the series. Like nothing really happens, to be honest. And I think this series as a whole could have been 2 books. That's it. I don't think I could have I didn't need all of this because some of these books are thick and I could have used like 75% less spice in all of the books in total and we focused on the lore. Would have appreciated it. So I gave Lessons in Thorns 3.75 3.75 stars. I gave Feast of Sparks 3 stars. That might have been generous. I gave Harvest of Sighs also 3 stars. Again, might have been generous with that. Last, I can't even say least, but last, Door of Bruises, I gave 3.5 stars. It was certainly better than the previous 2, but I wouldn't say better than the first one. Let's move on. Now, this next series, I really was excited to get into it because I saw the special edition of the first book in the series and I thought it was absolutely beautiful. I really wanted it, but I've been in a place where I've purchased special edition books, read the book, and then hated it, and then was mad because I had the special edition book and it was kind of too pretty to like give up in a way. I have given up some special edition books, but sometimes it's a little difficult, especially when special editions are more expensive generally. So I decided to read this on my Kindle. So I read Forged in Blood, Promised in Blood, and Bonded in Blood by Sadie Kincaid. And my eyes say I'm so happy I didn't buy the physical copy. Now, like I said, for the previous series, this one also happens consecutively. So each book is the continuation of the story and they're not like standalone. So I'll talk about them as a whole and not just individually. So the general story of these books is a girl who's basically a foster kid who ends up getting into this college. And this college, unbeknownst to her, is full of magical creatures, essentially werewolves, witches, vampires, and she finds herself in the eyes of this one powerful vampire group. There's 4 of them, and they've kind of taken her under their wings, so to speak, because they smell something different about her. And yeah, we discover some things and things kind of go off from there. It's really just following this character and her interactions with these vampires and what unfolds from there. Now, let's get into some pros. All right, pros wise, I don't have much to say. I for the first one, Forged in Blood, I really appreciated that this book was going in warp speed, which after reading the Thorn Chapel series, I thought it was like a breath of fresh air because things were happening so quickly. And after a slow moving series like that, I was like, oh, thank you. Thank you. And then I really love the history of like this new magical creature that was fun to learn about. And then Promised in Blood, I enjoyed the one of the vampires backstories. I enjoyed learning more about him and again more of the lore behind this new magical creature. And then the third one, bon, bon bound words, Bound in Blood. I The only thing I liked, it it was a lot less spicy than the previous two books. But let's get into the cons. So for the cons for Forged in Blood, I thought the FMC was very childish, very naive for everything. She cried every 5 seconds, and I was exhausted. Exhausted. I was like, people do not have this many tears in their body. I don't understand why you're crying. Literally, the smallest of things would set her off, and I was like, how? How? Why is she this emotional mess? And I don't love to see that on my FMC's characters, like their character traits, because I don't know. I feel like it's a very stereotypical way, some men would see women, and I don't like to see it in my books. So, yeah. Also the relationship she forms with the MMCs, i.e. the vampires, is very shallow. No depth whatsoever, no real chemistry. It just kind of happens and I don't really understand it. Also, the MMCs maybe save the oldest one are basically the same character. None of them have really any defining qualities or personalities. So, yeah, that was rough. Moving on to Promised in Blood. Oh my gosh, was there so much spice in that book? I don't I don't even know where to begin on that one. I don't understand how every conversation could be ending in sex, like every single one. Like if she had one conversation with one of the MMCs, it ended in sex. And I was exhausted as well for that. I was like, I literally cannot have a break in this. And then we continued on with the lack of development of the characters. The FMC was still overtly emotional. Moving on to Bound in Blood. I would say this one had the most going on in this one. The pacing was better. There was a lot less spice, like I said, but I was still bored. Not a lot was happening. Most of the characters that were seen as kind of almighty and just really strong, they weren't. I didn't understand, like none of the characters were fully developed. There was even her best friend is like a generic best friend. Like I don't understand how she can call her best friend because they don't spend that much time together. There was no like, nothing to like bring them together, like bond them to make them best friends. Yeah, I don't all of the characters very shallow, very one-dimensional. Didn't enjoy any of it. Very generic. Like I said, I could keep repeating myself, but yeah, that's about it. And then there was a lot of questions I had by the end of the book that just things just didn't add up. Lots of plot holes. Overall, did not enjoy myself for the entirety of the series. So first book, I gave it 3 stars. Yeah. And then the second book, I gave 3.5 stars, which is kind of funny, because this one had so much spice in it. But I think I gave this one so much more of a rating because of the actual development of the oldest vampire MMC. Like, he had some development behind him, and he was literally the only character that did. So I liked learning more about him and learning more about this other magical creature. And then Bound in Blood, I rated 2.75 stars, and it wasn't the worst book. Like I said, it had the most going for it, but as it was the final book in the trilogy, I expected so much more from it than I got. So, yeah. Next up, I have Jasmine Mass
Well, you gave it your best shot.
Psycho Shifters. And I was so excited to get into this one because I've heard so many good things. So let's get into the plot. So this book is a Omegaverse type of book. So we have, your general lineup of alphas, omegas, and betas, but we also have this thing called null shifters, and they are just like your average Joe, like they're nothing special, just your average person. And servants, which are null shifters, don't get tested for if they're going to be omega, null,
Approximately 10 hours later.
alpha, and beta. Sorry, I totally forgot what that whole lineup was for a moment there. And but times are tough, and they're just testing everyone, and you get tested when you're 20. And there's this girl who had a rough go, let's just say that, and she gets tested and she finds out that she's actually an alpha, not a null shifter that she's kind of thought she was this entire time. And so she gets put into this kind of like training facility because the alphas are at war with other creatures that come through these portals for other realms. And so they kind of defend their realm. And the betas also help, but the alphas are like the ones to help because they can shift into like these huge creatures, whatever. So she's put into this training facility essentially and starting to train with these other alphas. And that's the general story. That's where we're going into. And I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give anything really away, but I really, really enjoyed this book. So let's get into the pros. First up, this book is so unserious. Like, I know this is not going to be like your next literary like masterpiece. Like, it's such like a funny book, but like, yeah, it's just so unserious. And then I love the characters for the most part. They're all very unique. They have um just a lot of backstory behind them, and we've laid the groundwork for their development, which I really love. And then also it's very fast paced. There's something happening every second of every moment of this book. So I really enjoy that. I'm never bored. I'm just in the story. So I am very excited to see where this book will go. But let's get into some cons as well. Now, I really didn't have many cons for this book. The main thing is that the FMC at points was a little annoying to me. And there was something else. Like, I couldn't really pinpoint what I disliked, or just something felt like there was a missing part. Something was missing for me to fully enjoy this book. So I gave this book 4.5 stars. But again, I am very excited to see where this series goes because there's like 6 books in the series. So I'm in for a wild ride. I already know. Next up, I have Liar's Beach by Katie Cantugno. I'm so sorry. I'm totally butchering that name for sure. But I read this book because it's like a novella, and I felt like it was like up that spooky season alley. And yeah, let's get into the plot. So, at its core, this book is a mystery. So, we have like this poor kid who goes to this rich school. So, he has rich friends. So, his like rich BFF invites him out to kind of like the Hamptons, like, a version of the Hamptons, to hang out with them for the summer. And he agrees. They go out, and things are fun. Nothing really strange. But there's a little run in with this best friend's um arch nemesis, essentially. And then this arch nemesis ends up in his BFF's pool, just like completely out of it, unconscious. So there's just a lot of questions around how this arch nemesis got in this pool. So it's like him trying to like figure out like suspects and everything. And that's the plot of this book. So let's get into the prose. Now, I was concerned that the story wouldn't be fully developed because of how small this book is. Um yeah, it's a short book. So I didn't have high hopes for that, but I was pleasantly surprised to see that the story and characters were developed enough that I completely understood what was going on. It was set up quite nicely and efficiently. I really appreciated that. But let's get into the cons. Now, it's hard to root for anyone when you don't like any of the characters, which is where I was at. I dislike the MMC. I disliked his best friend who was like helping him. Well, not the best friend, but like an old friend was helping him trying to figure out this whole mystery. I disliked both of them. I disliked the family, like the BFF's family that he was staying with. Like none of the characters I wholeheartedly liked, so it was hard for me to like enjoy myself because I just didn't care about the characters. And then another thing was that I thought there were too many characters. There were so many characters being introduced. And like I said, this book is small. So, like, yes, they set up everything efficiently, but I just felt like it was a little overwhelming at times with how many characters were happening, well, being introduced. And there's just a lot of suspects, which, sure, yeah, it's a murder mystery type of thing, but I could have done with at least one or two less characters. It just got to be a little much. At a certain point, it was kind of hard to follow, and I did listen to this book, so again, very hard to follow at points when you're listening to it and you're not physically seeing it. So, yeah. But for those reasons, I gave this book 3.5 stars. It was like a cute, short mystery read. So, I mean, I did enjoy myself, but at the same time, it was kind of like, eh. I did realize how this first book ended, that there was going to be a sequel. So that was a little annoying because I thought this was going to be a standalone, but it is a sequel. Will I be listening to that one? Yes, because I'm hoping it'll kind of redeem itself, or the author will redeem herself with this next book, because I really didn't like really enjoy this one. But anyways, let's get into the stats. So that's it, guys. Those are all of the books that I read for the month of September. So, stats wise, I read 10 Kindle books and 9 audiobooks. I didn't like actually physically read any books, even though I have some of them physical. I just didn't read. I just didn't read them physically. I either listened to them or read them on my Kindle because it was easier. So total, I read 19 books. So for the month of September, my favorite book would probably be Slapshot Surprise by Melanie Harlow, ish, because I absolutely adored that book. And I highly recommend, if you like the accidental pregnancy trope, or maybe you don't like the accidental pregnancy trope, maybe this one will turn you over to liking that trope, at least in this instance, because I really did enjoy it. And then the book that I'm most anticipating reading for next month, well, October, is Nocticadia? Nocticadia, by I believe Carrie Lake, I want to say. And I've kind of held out on reading this book until October because of the, spooky vibes, and everyone says this book is so good. So I'm really excited to read it for the month of October. I know the vibes are going to be vibing and it's just going to be a great time. But that is it, guys. Hopefully, your September was a great reading month for you. If not, you still have October. It's okay. Let me know what your favorite book was for the month of September that you read, or maybe your least favorite book. Maybe you didn't have a favorite. So let me know in the comments. And yeah, until next time, read on, my bookish friends.